Be yourself. That was the 2022 Australian of the Year, Dylan Alcott's message to the country. Alcott said, "Be yourself and watch your world change. It's the hardest thing to understand, but it's the easiest thing in the world to do." Knowing who you are and being true to yourself have never been more important than in our world today. They're seen as signs of good mental health and well-being and the keys to authentic living and true happiness. Ours is a time when the topic of personal identity is of unprecedented interest. The terms personal identity and identity formation were barely in use before 1960. They now appear frequently in a wide range of disciplines and literature. Whereas once the advice to be yourself was rarely heard, now it's commonplace. So where should you look to find yourself? David Brooks, the New York Times columnist, observes that when people are figuring out how to lead their lives, the most important answers, they think, are found deep inside themselves. Personal identity, if you like, is a do-it-yourself project. All forms of external authority are to be rejected, and everyone's quest for self-expression should be celebrated. You are who you feel yourself to be on the inside, and acting in accordance with that identity constitutes living authentically. This movement is sometimes called expressive individualism. So when you look inward, what do you find? Many people define themselves today in terms of certain identity markers, along with ethnicity, gender, sexuality. Other markers such as race, nationality, age, culture, physical or mental capacity, occupation, possessions, marital status. All of these are quite critical for self-definition. So then what are we to make of this movement and the advice to be yourself? The Bible actually judges the traditional identity markers to be inadequate foundations upon which to build your personal identity. According to Galatians 3:28, you are more than your race, your ethnicity, your nationality, your culture, and even your gender. For in Christ Jesus, Paul says, there's neither Jew nor Gentile, slave nor free, male nor female, we are all one in Christ Jesus. And according to 1 Corinthians 7:29-31, you are more than your marital status, occupation, and possessions. And there's a sense in which you should live as if you were not married, had no dealings with the world, and did not take full possession of anything you own. So while such markers of identity are essential for personal identity, they're not the whole story. The traditional identity markers, if you like, are all important, but none of them is all important. In fact, there are 3 fatal flaws with the strategy of only looking inward to find yourself. Firstly, it generates a fragile sense of self, easily destabilized and lacking in genuine and lasting self-knowledge. Secondly, it's failing to lead to the good life, too easily producing selves that are self-deceived, self-absorbed, and self-centered. Many social commentators today note that our societies are increasingly plagued by depression and anxiety, and many people report that they lack purpose in life. Fragile, failing. Most significantly, the strategy of only looking inward to find yourself rests on faulty foundations. In order to find yourself, there are 3 other places to look. Firstly, around to others. We know ourselves by being known intimately and personally by others, those closest to us. We all know this. It's a beautiful thing to be known and loved by those close to us, and those relationships reflect back to us who we really are. Secondly, we look backward and forward to our life stories, which is really what connects you as a baby to who you are today, your story. Our stories are fundamental to our personal identities. But arguably, there's also the need to look upwards to God to find ourselves, not just backwards and forwards, not just around, but upwards. And of this third direction, of course, is the most controversial of all. Yet looking up one way or another seems to be an irrepressible human urge. The idea that human beings have an incurable predilection to worship is certainly the Bible's view of human nature. Each of us has a God-given awareness that there's something more to life than we experience on earth. God has, to quote Ecclesiastes, put eternity in our hearts. Maybe looking upward is essential for finding your true self. Perhaps rather than finding ourselves, being found by God is the key to a stable and satisfying sense of self.